Hello and good morning here from Germany, actually, because that's where I'm based in Hamburg, Germany. And it's not in the morning; it's already in the afternoon. So I'm quite happy that I'm doing the morning talk, because it would have been quite late for me if I would do an evening talk. So as I said, I'm Thoresten, and I'm really happy to be here to talk about sustainable UX and why, in my opinion, it's not enough to focus on the user, and to do that here with you today. And actually, I couldn't feel more honored to be here at Indie Design Week, because I also have a history in Indianapolis. Back in, many years, back in 2001 and 2004, I studied abroad in here at IOPOI. Well, not here, but here where you guys are. And actually, I couldn't resist. Okay, what I can tell, Poppy, is it happened what I said, what happens sometimes. My Zoom is frozen. You still can hear me and you still can see me, but I can't move on with my presentation. So, that is a good start. It means it could only get better over the time. So you would need to take the host rights from me and give it back to me, and then it should work again. So I'm still frozen, I can tell.
Hi there, I accidentally made you the host of the group. Could you hand it back to me?
So.
Thoresten.
Yes, I think I got it. Got back control. So let's hope for this. That's actually, we discussed it earlier. That's actually an issue with Zoom, and when you come from a Mac, and there's still actually no solution. So I have ran into this several times over the last 12 months, I can tell. So let's keep our fingers crossed that we are doing fine. So as I said, I have a history in Indianapolis. I studied there back in 2001 and 2004 at IOPY. And honestly, I couldn't resist to look for some old photos, as you can see here. So that's one of the labs where I spent several hours working on projects. And you can see monitors still look a little bit different from what they do today. And that's another one. That's a place where I spent many hours, which was called the Have a Nice Day Cafe, which I realized when talking to Poppy some weeks ago that it's not there anymore, but still. And also in Indianapolis, there was the place where I saw Michael Jordan playing basketball live. And I'm quite of a basketball fan, so that's quite cool. I can tell, but I also made some really, really good friends there who are still friends today and who I'm still in contact with. So as I said, I'm really happy to be here, and I hope to meet some new people from Indy. So I'm happy to connect with all of you. And I also realized that sustainability was also an issue for me back then, because me and my friends, we were moving around the city, really sustainable with our $50 bikes from the supermarket. And honestly, I think back then we were the only people in the whole city that are riding around by bike, actually. And also, I think Indianapolis and IOPY lay some parts of the basis for my career as a UX designer. So as I said, it's a great honor to come back here now after almost 20 years and to talk here to you. So let's jump back to present times and who I am now and what I am doing. For almost 11 years, I worked for a large digital agency here in Hamburg. I was building up and leading the UX department, creating digital products for various European clients, like, for example, Red Bull or European broadcasters or telecommunication providers. In the beginning of 2020, so last year, and 1 year after I returned actually from a burnout, I left the agency to head into a new direction. And just in case you're interested, I'm doing also a lot of talks about the UX of burnout, how I call it, And there are versions available online, for example, from last year's Adobe Max where I spoke, or also from the IXDA Interaction Conference where I spoke this February. So just to notice that. So what I'm doing now, I'm working as a so-called strategic UX consultant and coach. I'm helping companies to establish UX and building up UX teams, but also building still digital products. And besides, I work as a coach and mentor for UX designers and, well, speak at conferences like here, especially about mental health and sustainability. And I think this is important. It was important for me, or important part why I left the agency, because I wanted to give myself more time to work on the right projects, on matter of heart projects like sustainability, like mental health for creatives. And so, well, I'm not doing UX the whole day. When not dealing with UX, I do. I really like being outside. I'm doing a lot of hiking and mountaineering and triathlon. And I think maybe that is also a reason why sustainability is such an important topic for me for quite a long time now. As I said, it's a matter of heart, and I'm happy to be here to talk. And so now let's start. And I want to start with a very nice quote, I think, that says the greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. That's a quote by Robert Swan. And he was a polar explorer. He was the first human who have hiked up to both poles, actually. And I like this quote a lot because it reminds me that it's on every single one of us to save this planet and this society. So let's move on. Back in 2019, I was giving a talk with Adobe at the World Interaction Design Day. The topic was about our responsibility as a designer. And in preparation to this talk, I did a little poll among designers about responsibility. And I want to share just a very few insights here because they're quite interesting. So I asked, for example, what designers think about when asked about their responsibility in terms of their work. Interesting fact here, as you can see on the right side, back then, for the people I asked, the environment was only a minor topic when thinking about the responsibility. But interesting as well, when I asked about the difficulty to fulfill responsibility, we asked designers had in mind the environment. Designers were aware that it's quite difficult to fulfill a responsibility in terms of the environment. And at the last part I want to share, I was asking, how often did you feel like the project you're working on does not match your idea of protecting the environment, of being sustainable? And it showed that there was and is awareness. Designers feel that their work too often is in conflict with their personal idea of, well, protecting the climate or being sustainable in general. So I would like to say, let's change this now. There's still some way to go. But the good news actually is we designers are more powerful than ever. And that's really important to keep in mind and to realize. I think many of you know charts like these. So what this says actually is that design-centric companies grow faster than others. So the stock market price of them grows faster than the stock market price of companies who are not design-centric. So what that means is, with a design-centric approach, you can make more money as a company. And by the way, with charts like these, the large consulting companies sell design thinking to the big companies. Well, I do not think that this is a good thing, actually, because too many people talk about design thinking without really understanding that it has to be more than selling some workshops. But that's a fully other different topic. Anyway, this gives us designers a huge amount of power, I think. And you all might know the ROI of UX. So what it says is with $1 invest in UX, you get like $100 back. So again, that shows us we designers have more power than we had ever. So if we have the power, how could we actually use it? And well, I have to say, I think we have to stop doing what we do most of the time, designing for our users only. I know this is our thing, especially if you're more from the UX direction. It's our profession. We think about the user. We fight for the user. We understand the user. We know what the user needs. But this is maybe not enough anymore. And I want to mention the work of Kevin Slavin here, or specifically his talk, Design as Participation. I was able to listen to one of Kevin's talks in Malmö in Sweden, which I think about 3 years ago. And by the way, the conference in Malmö, great conference, great recommendation by myself, one of the best digital conferences I have ever visited. Great inspiring people talking about how to use tech, design, etc. for a better future. Really, really inspiring. And you can watch all the sessions from the prior years, from the past years online. I definitely recommend to have a look there. It's all for free. But back to Kevin's Level and Design as participation. I want to bring up one quote from him, and that says, when designers center around the user, where do the needs and desires of the other actors in the system go? The lens of the user obscures the view of the ecosystems it affects. And that is so true. We design great products for our users, but maybe we should ask ourselves, who else is affected by the product or the products that we build? So that leads me to the first point. Don't design for the user, design for all actors in the system. Instead of designing for a human only, we should design for humanity. Instead of designing for our users only, we should design for all actors of the system that is involved. We have to see our work in a larger context. Instead of designing for our user, we could and should think about the impact our work has on the environment and our society. And I brought you a small example, and it's in German, but I will translate. So it's about the UX of receiving a parcel. I grabbed this from a friend of mine who brought this up, and this shows actually the UI of two big parcel delivery companies or their apps. And so the companies are DPD on the left side and DHL on the right side. DHL is a global player. You might know them in the US as well. DPD is only on the German market, but both are very famous here. When you get a parcel, for sure it will be from one of these for a good reason. So what you can see here, the DPD example on the left side shows you quite exactly when the parcel will arrive. They set up a 1-hour time frame. They tell you how many stops the driver is still away. I think you might know this from Amazon, for example. They do the same. In difference, DHL only shows that it might arrive today. There is no time frame, not even the confidence that it will arrive today, the parcel. So as a UX person, I could say the DPD, so the example on the left side, is much better because of a much better UX for the user. So great improvement. But what other effects are there or may be there? Getting a parcel for the user was improved. This might lead to more orders by the user because it became more convenient. And what is the price? And if we are honest, an unsustainable and also unhuman process was made better for the user. And by that stimulates the user to act even more unsustainable. More delivery trucks driving through our cities. And I have to say, even if they are running on electric power, it's still a waste of energy. There is more packaging waste. And also, the already really bad conditions for the drivers. So they're not well paid. They have bad working conditions. They get even worse. So parcel delivery drivers, actually, they are not paid well. And their time schedules are super demanding for them. So did we make the process better for them? I don't know. Wouldn't it be better to rethink the whole process of delivery at all? So, for example, how can we improve delivery to central pickup locations and make people to use this option more? Or another thought in terms of parcel delivery and the experience for the delivery people. This is someone I heard in another talk some month ago. The question is, why don't we tip the parcel delivery people? We tip the people that brings us our pizza. We don't tip the people that brings our parcels. So why is there not an option in the app to tip the driver? And I want to give you another recommendation here. This is a really nice thing, and I highly recommend to have a look at this, systemic design. And I want to explain it with a short quote. Every product and service is a system composed of parts working together to accomplish a common purpose. Design thinking has a bias towards developing products and services that may become the problems of tomorrow. With a systems thinking mindset, the designer starts to view products and services as not the end goal, but as different leverage points within the system. So there are several more great resources about systemic design. I just named this because I met Alison, who runs this site, in February at the Interaction 21 conference, where we both were speaking. And I think she did a great job here. And it is a very good starting point to look into this. But let's get to my next point. Don't design for the user, design for the environment. Well, quite obvious, you might say. And yeah, maybe true. But I just discussed just last week with a friend of mine about sustainability and designers. She's doing her master thesis in Sweden at the moment about sustainable design. And she's doing a lot of research and interviews with designers. And what she realized is that still there are many designers out there claiming that they work in digital and therefore are already quite sustainable. Well, as many of us might know, the opposite is the case, and I want to provide just a few numbers here. At first, if it would be a country, the web that we all use for our work, right, would be on track to become the 4th largest CO2 emitter on Earth. This comparison is well known, I think, but it needs to be said again from time to time, I think. Running the internet, running the stuff that we use costs a lot of energy. Even if we work only in digital, we still use a lot of energy. And I brought a second simple example to break that down a little bit. Another friend of mine from Belgium, Bavo, he's running the largest Belgian UX meetup, did a calculation about the impact of tweets. So one tweet actually is causing 0.02 grams of CO2. 350,000 tweets are sent per minute. So this is 7,000 grams of CO2 per minute. That means approximately 10 billion grams of CO2 emission per day just because of tweets sent. And to set that into a relation, and I just calculated that last week, that's the same carbon footprint like one person flying from Indianapolis to Chicago 86 times. And I don't mean the whole plane, it's just one person. So, right? Just to give you an idea there. And I want to come up with a third very popular example. And if I would talk to you live and would be in the same room, I would ask you for a show of hand. How many of you have used a carousel in one or more web projects? In fact, the carousel is quite energy consuming because it loads a bunch of data onto the website. And honestly, it's useless data because most of the users never use the carousel. So in fact, 1% are clicking it. And of those, so of these 1%, almost 90% only click at the first position. So 1% of clicks for the most significant object on the homepage, that's not really good. In fact, carousels are just a vehicle that is used so that every department can put some content on the viewport of the homepage. As I just said, in fact, this makes a website bad and on this way also consumes a lot of energy. It is on people like us, on us as designers, to stop using such things. And there are several more examples. We should not propose them anymore. And if some marketing guy asks for it, tell him or her that it's bad, or for several reasons. And I just want to give you another example. This is pretty cool. So if somebody asks for a carousel, just send them this link. Should I use a carousel.com? This is a really good, explains really good why a carousel is a bad thing. And I have another great recommendation about sustainable web design. Tom Greenwood is a co-founder of the London agency Whole Grain Digital, and he's a specialist in web performance and sustainability. Tom created, for example, the first online guide for sustainable product design, I think back in 2004 already. And he's known for writing and speaking about how business and design and web technology can be part of the solution to environmental issues. And he was also the lead author of the Sustainable UX Manifesto that some of you might know. So I can highly recommend this book to deep dive more into this topic. But let's get to the next point that I have brought here for you. Don't design for the user, ask the right questions, right? And I brought you, I think, hopefully a super striking example here that you all might know. I'm pretty sure many know this picture. This is the picture that we use when we explain people, hey, what is the difference between UI and UX? Well, and I know UI is part of UX, but we have UI designers, we have UX designers. And if I want to explain my mom, what is my job? I show her this picture and she understands what am I doing and why I'm a UX designer, not a UI designer. But the interesting thing is you can look on this from different sides. So we could ask, which of these is more sustainable? And I'm pretty sure the glass bottle is more sustainable. So sustainability beats UX here. But we can go even further, I think, because honestly, does it matter? Ketchup is super unhealthy. Too much sugar, bad for our body and our brain. And depending where from the tomatoes are, so looking at it here from the European side, the carbon footprint is bad. When the tomatoes come from Germany or the Netherlands, it's bad because they are grown in greenhouses that has to be heated. The energy consumption is bad because, again, in Germany and Netherlands, the greenhouses has to be lighted in spring and autumn. If the tomatoes come from Spain, where it's hot and where there is enough light, it's still bad because they have a high water consumption because of the heat. So I do not say we should ban ketchup here from tomorrow on. I just wanted to show you that we have to look on the products we work on from different angles. And I brought you another example. And I think very often when we talk about carbon emissions, electric mobility quite often is discussed as one of the solutions to it. But is it really? I saw this tweet some weeks ago and it nails it from my opinion, and hope this is quite good viewable in the stream. So in case it's not, the picture shows a village with houses with green grass gardens around somewhere in a seemingly very dry region. So by realizing this, you get an idea that much water and energy is necessary to run and create and maintain these. And even if all these people use electric cars instead, still all the water and energy is wasted here, and still the cars need energy. So in fact, our whole lifestyle is consuming too much energy. We need to consume less energy. We need to go more ways, not with the private car, but by, for example, public transportation, bike, etc. And the solution cannot be just to switch from fuel to electric driven cars. And I want to provide you with another great read. This is called the Copenhagen Catalog. It was created, I think 4 years ago at the Copenhagen Tech Festival. 150 people from 45 countries came up with 150 principles for a new direction in tech. And here are just a few examples. I read through this from time to time just to get some motivation, and I really like this. And I really like these 3 examples, and there are many, many more great things. So again, I can recommend, I printed some of them, put it on my wall sometimes just to have some motivation for myself. But let's move on. Don't design for the user, design for the right projects. So I think we all want to do the cool projects, right? For the cool users or the products, or working for the products that everyone knows. During my already quite long work life so far, I have worked for a lot of clients and products, I can tell. Many great products as well as lame ones. But the point is, it is not always about doing the coolest project. Sometimes, and when we have the choice, we should also check what kind of impact, for example, for the environment we can give in a project. And I brought you another example from my work life here. So you see here actually 2 clients I work for. On the left side, it's the VTG. They rent rail freight wagons to companies all over Europe and even in the US. Nobody here in Germany knows this company, I can tell. On the right side, you see the ZDF. That's a huge public broadcaster here in Germany, offering a stunning VOD service for all the content. Almost everyone in Germany knows the ZDF. They work closely with Apple, for example. They get pre-release versions of Apple's hardware products, for example. And if you work for the ZDF, you also get access to all these cool stuff. So great client. If somebody had asked me like 3 years ago which client I want to work for, I would have said ZDF. For sure, a large public broadcaster working closely with Apple, how cool is that? But in 2019, I had the great opportunity to work with the VTG on their digital platform. So the idea was what they wanted to do to digitalize their whole rail freight, as well as the whole market, because the market of these rail freight renting thing is totally analog. It's like they still use fax, for example. It's insane, unbelievable. And they don't know where their wagons actually are. People have to drive out there and search for them. It's crazy. And though in the beginning, I also thought this might be one of the lame projects, I had to learn for myself that this was, in fact, a great opportunity to make a bigger impact. The more freight is transported on rail, the less trucks are on our streets. It's this simple. So this was and still is a project where I could help and work on making a change. I think there are really cool projects in terms of sustainability that are sometimes not recognized before having a second sight. So it's important for us to look out for these projects that sometimes skip the super cool ones, and for the super cool brands to look for the projects where I could make a better impact, for example. Well, and it got me actually the opportunity to drive a railroad locomotive, which was super cool. Sorry, I had to drop this here because it was a childhood dream from myself. But here is another recommendation actually to read, and it's the Circular Design Guide. And in terms, I can highly recommend this. It's a great site with a bunch of material as well as case studies, so practical case studies. If you're interested in this, get in there, have a look there. Definitely worth to look in. But let's get to the next point. And don't design for the user. And I just said design for the right projects. And now I say we also have to design for the wrong projects. And what do I mean with this? And this leads me to TUI Cruises. As you can guess, they offer ship cruises. Actually, it's a joint venture of Royal Caribbean Cruises, one of the largest global ship cruise operators, and TUI, a very large European travel operator. The agency I worked and still works for TUI Cruises. And I worked for them several times as well. And yes, this is a conflict because cruise ships are not sustainable at all. There were colleagues who did not want to work for TUI Cruises, and that's okay. Actually, I have a different approach there because I can tell at TUI Cruises, there were also working very nice people who wanted to make a change as well. So I could ask myself, how can I help to change? How can I be part of the change? Because I think change does not happen on its own. And from the outside, you have to get inside to change things from there. And here's a big chance. When working for such a client, I can get myself maybe in a position where I can bring in ideas, suggestions, and by this help to change. So I worked not constantly for TUI Cruises, but here's a great example for what I mean. Due to our work, we were asked after some years to organize and participate in a workshop with the topic, the Cruise Ship 2023. In this workshop, actually, a bunch of high management people were participating. And there we were not talking about digital anymore. We were talking about engine emissions, about sustainability, etc. And hey, me and my colleagues got a seat on the table. We could drop in and accept our ideas. This is how change could start, I think. So I think we cannot all work for the cool startup or the cool company that is already 100% sustainable, or right? There are not so many jobs there right now. And maybe sometimes it's even more important to work for the other companies or projects, to change them, to be a change there. I think important here is that does not mean that we should do everything. Every one of us has to find his or her own limits. Everybody has to find out where to say no and where to go into the fight. And well, since I got through burnout, I know what I'm talking about. Important is that we need to be part of changing these companies, these projects or processes, which are not good yet. And this is a process. It's not a one-time event. And that leads me to another great recommendation. That's called the Ethical Design Handbook. It's written by Trine Falbe, Martin, Michael Frederickson, and Kim Anderson. I met Trine at this year's UX Copenhagen conference, and I can highly recommend this nice little book. It's a guide to ethical design for digital products. It's full of practical guidelines, actually, on how to make ethical decisions to influence a positive change and to help business to grow in a sustainable way. But let's get to the next point, because sometimes I think it's not enough to do the good stuff. We also have to talk about. As I said earlier, 95% of the people here in Germany or even Europe do not know the VTG. So the project I was talking about earlier. And it's the same with many other clients and projects. So here are just a few screens from the beta release of this project with the VTG. The platform is called Trago, so that's why it looks like this here. I can tell even inside of our agency, many people did not realize how cool this project was and still is. The whole project flew under the radar most of the time. We had to promote it even inside our agency and explain to the colleagues and also the management why this is a great project. And we also had to help our client to promote the platform. At the beginning of last year, so 2020, the beta launch took place. They planned a huge event, actually, where they invited 200 of their customers, which is huge, to show the Trago platform to them. And keep in mind, these are the people working with the fax and all the analog stuff. So we had to help them to make this event a success. It wasn't our job. We were not paid for it. And I'm talking about working on the weekend without getting compensation for it. We were spending 2 weekends actually with building a launch video in After Effects, for example. We were meeting up at the event location with them on the weekend to create a lighting and sound concept, to build assets for all the signage screens. We did not earn any extra money with this. And well, I knew that I was going to leave the agency 3 weeks later at that point. But I can tell from my point of view, I wanted to do this because I believe it is important to help bringing such a thing to a success. It feels right and necessary to do so. And I don't say we should work without getting paid for it. What I mean is we should think about for what kind of projects we spend some extra time, and that sometimes it's not only about building a great product, but also about helping to make it a success. So because unfortunately it's not enough to do good, sometimes we have to talk about, and well, instead of talking about the next cool UX of the next cool app or something, we should start talk more about these types of projects. And that leads me to another really, really nice recommendation and community. At climatedesigners.org, you can connect with several designers from all over the world and share your work and projects. That look in the work and the projects of the others, definitely worth a look, I can tell. That brings me to the next point. Don't design for the user, design for change. It's not about the projects itself. It's also about tackling your colleagues, other departments, clients to create awareness. It's about convincing others. It's about establishing processes and ways to do so. You can start small at your own work, your own daily practices. You can see what you do in your own daily processes to change. And as an example, I want to bring up the so-called green retrospective. It's a great idea by Aaron Gallup. I read a blog post about this earlier. And the idea is to do a retrospective after each project to talk about the sustainability aspects of the project. What went good, what went bad, what could be done better the next time. We all know this from several retros that most of us did, I think. What I really like is the idea of doing a specific retro just, because of the sustainability aspects, to create awareness in the whole team, to recap what could have been done more sustainable in terms of, for example, the data or energy consumption of the project. So did you use the carousel or not? To recap where you were able to be a change, also to recap where you could not be a change and why. But we also need to try to get bigger. So not only talking at the level of a single project, but also at the level of strategy, be it with our client or our own management. Because the strategic advantage of acting sustainable is already there. And I brought this tweet and this nice research here. Christina is one of the managing directors of Sinna Schrader here in Hamburg. This Sinna Schrader belongs to Accenture Interactive, a huge global agency. And she extracted one of the really important results of this research done by Harvard Business Review. And it says, our results confirm that the adoption of strategic sustainability practices is significantly and positively associated with both return of capital and market valuation multiples. And furthermore, the data suggests that some companies are creating real strategic advantage by adopting sustainability measures their competitors can't easily match. The point is, I think still too many people think that being sustainable means making less profit. Well, and so in my opinion, and in terms of circular economy, this is the wrong point of view because it cannot be all about the profit. Yet we as society still have to make some way there. But even in terms of profit, sustainability can already be a valuable strategy. And it's us who have to convince others about this and to fight to make others understand this as well. But let's get to the next point. Don't design for the user, design for networks, because we cannot do it all on our own. And we designers cannot do it only working with designers. And I brought another nice quote here, I think, and it's a quote by Lynn Margulies. She was a famous evolutionary theorist and biologist. And I really like this quote. It says, life did not take over the planet by combat, but by networking. We cannot fight everyone and all the time. This is a fight we cannot win in the long term. We need to get together. We need to, for example, form alliances with other designers. And we need to form alliances with people from other professions, because when we look at nature, there are many, many great examples of the symbiosis of animals with nature or other animals. Like you can see here, the bee needs the nectar of the flower to build and feed the bee community. And by this, it helps the flower to reproduce itself. These are the really powerful alliances, actually. So we do not need only to team up with other designers, but also with other people, other professions. With developers, for example, you know what? They are sustainable by nature because they are really interested in high performance code, and high performance code needs less energy. With marketing, and I can tell I had many fights with marketing, but still they have a lot of power. And you can create more impact if you can convince marketing and team up with them. Or for example, business intelligence. I said this before, at some point it is unfortunately about numbers. And BI people can help you to get the numbers you need to prove success, to find opportunities, to get good reasons and arguments for sustainable decisions. And I want to bring up this picture once more, because this was also about networking. It was about forming alliances. Here, we creative people from the agency formed an alliance with the marketing people of the client. And by that, we got a high management people to the table and got us in the middle. So we as creators have to form alliances with other departments, be it in our company or be it at the client. This is how we can become a real force, I think, even if that means working more closely together with the people who think totally different from how we think. And here I want to mention another great community, actually. It's called the Hive Initiative, a great community found by Erin Gallup. I mentioned her earlier when I talked about the Green Retrospective. And so by her and 7 other people back in 2019, I think. The idea of them is to create a community and support to help people that work on the climate crisis. The Hive Initiative is a organization that dedicates itself to supporting people who take climate action now and make, actually the planet, that's how they call it, a stakeholder in their work. It's about connecting, sharing practices, inspiring, encouraging with each other. And that actually directly leads me to the next point. Because I would say don't design for the user, design for all aspects of sustainability. When talking about sustainability, very often we talk about carbon emissions or the environment, and that is good and that is important. But actually, sustainability has more aspects. So one example, the proportion of men using the internet is higher than women in 2/3 of the countries worldwide. So still, the inequality between genders is huge. And this is also an aspect of sustainability. Or another example, an increase of 10% in mobile internet penetration in Africa can have a direct impact to the GDP per capita by 2.5%. So there's also a huge inequality in the access to technology. And these are also aspects of sustainability, and there are more. And there is another great quote from the Copenhagen catalog that I mentioned before. And this said, it's our responsibility to create a world where technology helps humans live more delightful and meaningful lives. And that means all humans, not only the one living in the rich countries. We have to save the planet for sure, but we also have to save society. We have to fight inequalities. Because sustainability is more than carbon emissions. And the cool thing actually is, somebody already named the aspects of sustainability. The UN, the United Nations, did. They created the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so we have there, for example, if you get through them, we have climate and environment topics there, but also we have the inequality topics I was talking about, being it between nations or between genders, for example. And at this point, I want to mention another project, and well, disclaimer, that's a project I'm part of, and it's quite a new project. So what me and others realized when working with sustainable design, we had the feeling that very often sustainability is reduced to climate action and energy consumption. And these are very, very important aspects, maybe the most important, because, well, when we waste the planet, we are all done. But we thought it is important also to tackle the other aspects that are there. And that's why we want to create what we call the Sustainable UX Manifesto. And now you can say, oh no, not another manifesto, because yeah, you're right. That sucks. Haha, you can see we did it also in the logo. We couldn't resist. Yeah, so yeah, we don't need another manifesto. There are many, many great manifestos out there. And the problem with manifestos is we sign them, but what happens then? What we miss actually is rather a practical tool set very often that we all can use and take into action. So there are many practical tool sets out there, most of them tackling climate and energy. We want to build something that gives us and others practical tools for all the aspects of sustainability. And that's like we want to have best practice cases. We want to have tools for our daily work. We want to have arguments to convince clients, colleagues, management. And we want to do or tailor it actually to the different experience levels that we have, because a junior might need different tools from a senior or a manager. So that is why we started working on the Sustainable UX Manifesto. Actually, just started a few weeks ago with a small kickoff at the UX Copenhagen conference. And the idea is not to do this alone in an exclusive circle, but as a non-profit community project. Because, hey, there are 17 UN goals to work on this. There's lots of stuff to do. So this is the mural board, just to give you a quick idea. And we are happy actually about everybody who is interested to join, be it now or later. So if you're interested in this, just approach us on one of these channels. Don't expect too much. There's not much on the website. We did not spend much time on building a cool website, but more on working on the stuff actually. So join us there. Or we also created a Slack community. So feel free to come there, and it's open for any person who is interested. Even if you do not want to or do not have the time to work with us, you still can join the community because we think it's important to get us together there. So feel free to join. We are an international English-speaking group, and we would be happy to welcome some of you on board with the Sustainable UX Manifesto. And that leads me actually to the last chapter. Don't design for the user, design beyond sustainability. We are talking so much about sustainability, and that is good. Still, we have to keep in mind that this is not the end goal, but a step on our way. This graphic actually is from the Regenerators Collective. When we reach and meet all the sustainable development goals, we have reached a point where we are adding no more harm to our planet, because at the moment we are just harming our planet, right? That's important to know. The thing is, we need to go further. We need to focus on, rather transformative than incremental change. We need to go beyond sustainability and aiming to be regenerative, actually. Sustainability is still a really important bridge that we have not crossed yet. But the step from sustainability to regeneration is more than a change in simple terminology. It's a change in the mindset and will drive profound transformation, I think. We need to move towards sustainability, but being there is not the end. And we should start now to think beyond. Because as David Attenborough once said, we have a finite environment, the planet. Anyone who thinks that you can have infinite growth in a finite environment is either a madman or an economist. We need to change some paradigms that have run and still run our society, because if not, we will destroy this planet and our society. And since we already have destroyed so much, it's not only about causing no more harm, but also about rebuild these things we have already destroyed. And I want to end with another quote of a great graphic designer. David Carson, who was a great surfer, by the way, as well, said, "Design can save the world right after rock and roll does." And I have to say, sorry, David, design can save the world, and it does not need to wait for rock and roll there. We designers have a huge amount of power, even more power than ever before. But we have to use it and take action. Often the seemingly uncool projects are the really cool ones where we can be a much bigger impact to the world. We need to talk about our success stories in terms of sustainability. We need to think beyond our users, holistic and sustainable driven, even if that means that we are leaving our core discipline. We need to be a change from the inside of these companies or departments or projects which are not sustainable yet. And we need to be the change from the inner side by getting a seat on the table. We need to create networks, not only among us designers, but also with other departments and professions. and we should tackle all aspects of sustainability. And yeah, as I said, in the end, we have to prepare to go beyond sustainability. But this won't be easy. I did lots of projects so far. I failed often to do these things. I did projects I was not convinced about, where I couldn't drive change as I wanted. But even if out of 10 times, only one time I can change something, this is still a success. And even more important is that we take action now. Every small step is important and a success. And this means we have to stop designing for our users only. We need to go beyond, consequently, every day. Thank you. So I think now I'm open to your questions.
A question that I do have, maybe while we're waiting for some to come in, I know that you mentioned briefly something that resonated with me about sort of sometimes having to almost fight your marketing department, right? Because sometimes some friction can come from that. Do you have any tips or maybe best practices for working with people who are working within the constraints of marketing to maybe make them more empathetic to your mission?
I think the bad answer, not the bad answer, it's always a process. It's always a way that you have to go. There is never this one talk I will do with somebody and then somebody is convinced or whatever. It's always dropping ideas, like incepting ideas to people, maybe dropping numbers, dropping examples like, okay, look at this. They ran a sustainable strategy on a certain project and they made lots of profit, because this is, you have like, you have to inflame the minds of these people, and this is how it works. So it's like, unfortunately, it's a process, and you have to go this way, and it might take some time. It's always a thin red line, and you have always to look, okay, where do I have to find to fight, and where do I have to try to make an arrangement with somebody. And this is hard to decide sometimes, though, as I said, it's trying to do something is always good, and sometimes it's hard not to get frustrated, but this is the way, like the Mandalorian said.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm assuming by connecting with you on LinkedIn and through your website, like you talked about before, you probably have some resources for anybody who is interested in some of those numbers and connecting that to the bottom line.
True. Yeah.
Okay. We do have a question. Can you talk about additional products that left you with a new or more nuanced perspective?
Pardon? Can you say that once more?
Sure. Can you talk about additional projects that left you with a more nuanced perspective? So any additional projects that might have created a new perspective for you?
Well, what is always interesting for me, I had this VTG project, and as I said, the interesting thing was for me to realize what kind of impact I can be. So at the moment, for example, I'm working for a company here in Hamburg, and they build electric scooters. And so what's really interesting for me, or why I decided I like the idea. I'm not a fan of riding electric scooters. I'm more a bike rider, well, as you have seen on my picture there. Still, I think, or I thought, and I think these electric scooters can be an important part in changing mobility in urban areas, in cities. So when I want to go onto a way where I'm dreaming of a city where no more personal cars drive around, right? Because I think it's not necessary. And so, not everybody wants to ride a bike like I do. So for people like these, electric scooters might be a good alternative. So though I'm using these, and as I said, I'm still thinking they are still using energy that would be better not be used if I just use a bike. It's still a valid or a valuable point here, because it might change many other people. So sometimes it's about, and that's what I learned there, it's about detaching my personal view on a product and thinking about it from a different perspective and see, okay, what kind of impact can it be, even if I'm not convinced by the product for myself? And so this is another example for something, for a product I won't use, which is not a product that's interesting for me. And as I said, I still think it's energy consuming. But what I learned is, or what I had to realize is that, it can be an important part on the way where I want to go. And therefore it's a good reason to work for them and to help them to do this.
Absolutely, that's fantastic advice. And I have to ask, just as a native Hoosier, do you have a favorite basketball team?
Well, actually, since Dirk Nowitzki, I think, the famous German basketball player, which I actually also saw in Indianapolis when I was there for the second time, 2004. And so it's still the Dallas Mavericks. So when they won the championship back in 2011, I think, not sure. So that was huge for me, I can tell. So I'm still a fan, and Luka Doncic, a nice European guy playing there. It's a pleasure to watch them. But still, I hope one day I can come back to the Pacers, actually, because when I was there, I was I think I was visiting almost every game I could. I always had these super cheap $10 seats on the top. But so the Pacers are still not my favorite team, but they are a team I follow. And no, I mean, really, it's Reggie Miller I really like Reggie Miller, I can tell. Killer Miller, yeah, for sure.
Okay, fantastic. So beyond manifestos, what's next in the charter for sustainable UX?
As I said, I think that's what we realized, or what I realized when discussing with different people throughout the last month or throughout the last year. At first is to get a more holistic approach on sustainability. We are very often talking just about carbon emissions and energy consumption, and that's super important, but we have also to talk about all these inequalities that we still have. And so I think we have to get a more holistic approach there. And for sure, you cannot do everything at the same time. But so that's the idea that we had. Can we come up with something that helps you to tackle all of these aspects if you want to? So I think this is really important, because climate is really important. As I said, if we waste the planet, we are all done, and that's it. But we also have to tackle the other problems. And second, the last thing that I said, we also have to go beyond. So I heard a talk of what's her name? I think Laura something from the Regenerators Initiative collective. And so it was really, it opened my eyes a little when she said okay, it's good if we reach sustainability, but then we are just at the point zero. We do not harm the planet anymore. Still, there's all stuff we have already broken. So we have to think beyond and think about how we can repair these things, how we can get regenerative. So I think these are two important things: tackling all the aspects, get to a more holistic approach, and already start thinking beyond, thinking about going in a regenerative direction, and not only to this point zero where we are sustainable, because this cannot be the end. We have to move further.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Thoresten. I think that's all the time we've got for questions today, but we appreciate you. That was a fantastic talk. And I think now we're going to pass it off to maybe an MC for our next speaker.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.